The old mansion stood at the edge of the town of Hollow's End, shrouded in mist and mystery. For years, it had been abandoned, its once grand halls now crumbling and forgotten. The townspeople whispered tales of ghosts and strange occurrences, and no one dared to enter the house after dark. But that all changed one cold autumn evening when a letter arrived at the home of Sarah, a curious young woman with a thirst for adventure. The letter was written in elegant script on aged parchment, and it read, "You are cordially invited to spend the night at the Hollow's End mansion. Those who brave its halls will be rewarded handsomely. Be there at dusk. A friend." Sarah's heart pounded with excitement as she read the invitation. She had always been fascinated by the mansion and the stories that surrounded it. She decided then and there that she would accept the challenge. Little did she know, this decision would change her life forever. As the sun dipped below the horizon, casting long shadows across the town, Sarah stood at the entrance to the mansion. The iron gates creaked open as she pushed them, and she walked up the overgrown path leading to the front door. The mansion loomed above her, its windows dark and empty, like eyes watching her every move. Taking a deep breath, Sarah pushed open the heavy wooden door and stepped inside. The air was thick with dust and the smell of decay. Cobwebs hung from the ceiling, and the floorboards creaked under her feet. She shivered, but her determination kept her moving forward. She found herself in a grand foyer, with a sweeping staircase leading to the upper floors. To her left was a dimly lit hallway, and to her right, a large door that seemed to lead to a sitting room. The house was silent, except for the distant sound of dripping water. Suddenly, the door behind her slammed shut, and she jumped, her heart racing. She turned to see if anyone was there, but the foyer was empty. It was as if the house itself had welcomed her in and was now holding her captive. Sarah decided to explore the sitting room first. The door creaked as she pushed it open, revealing a dusty, old-fashioned parlor. Faded wallpaper peeled from the walls, and a grand piano sat in the corner, its keys yellowed with age. She approached the piano, running her fingers over the keys, but no sound came out. As she turned to leave, she caught a glimpse of movement out of the corner of her eye. She spun around, but there was no one there. The room was empty, yet she couldn't shake the feeling that she was being watched. Hello?" as she called out, her voice echoing through the empty room. "Is anyone there?" There was no response, just the eerie silence of the mansion. She decided to leave the parlor and continue exploring. The feeling of being watched grew stronger with each step she took, and the hairs on the back of her neck stood on end. She walked down the hallway, her footsteps echoing in the silence. The walls were lined with old portraits, their eyes seeming to follow her as she passed. She felt a chill run down her spine and quickened her pace, eager to find out who had sent the invitation and why. Sarah's journey led her to a large, dusty library filled with towering bookshelves and a grand fireplace. The room was dimly lit by a single flickering candle on a desk in the center. She approached the desk, curious about the candle's presence, and noticed an old leather-bound book lying open. She picked up the book and read the title, The History of Hollow's End Mansion. Her curiosity piqued. She began to read the pages. The book detailed the mansion's dark past, filled with tales of tragedy and loss. It spoke of the original owners, the Blackwood family, who had mysteriously vanished one night, leaving the house abandoned. As she read, the candle flickered and went out, plunging the room into darkness. She fumbled for her flashlight and turned it on, its beam cutting through the shadows. The room seemed to grow colder, and she felt a presence behind her. She turned slowly, her flashlight illuminating a figure standing in the doorway. It was a man, dressed in old-fashioned clothing, his face pale and expressionless. He stared at her with hollow eyes, and Sarah felt a wave of fear wash over her. Who are you?" as she asked, her voice trembling. The man said nothing, just continued to stare. Then, as suddenly as he had appeared, he vanished into thin air. Sarah's heart pounded in her chest as she tried to make sense of what she had just seen. Was it a ghost? Was the mansion truly haunted? Determined to uncover the truth, Sarah continued her exploration. She climbed the grand staircase to the second floor, her flashlight casting eerie shadows on the walls. The upper floors were even more decrepit than the lower, with broken furniture and shattered windows. As she walked down the hallway, she noticed a door at the end that seemed out of place. It was newer than the others, with a shiny brass handle that gleamed in the flashlight's beam. She approached the door and turned the handle, surprised to find it unlocked. The door opened to reveal a small hidden room. Inside was a desk cluttered with papers and a large ornate mirror on the wall. Sarah approached the desk, her eyes scanning the papers. They were old letters, written in the same elegant script as the invitation she had received. She picked up one of the letters and began to read. "And my dearest Elizabeth, I fear the mansion is no longer safe. The spirits grow restless, and I believe they mean us harm. We must leave before it is too late. Yours forever, Henry." Sarah felt a chill run down her spine. The letters were addressed to Elizabeth Blackwood, one of the original owners of the mansion. It seemed that Henry had tried to warn her of the danger, but they had never made it out. She turned to leave the room, but her reflection in the mirror caught her eye. There was something wrong with it. The reflection showed her standing in the room, but there was a dark figure standing behind her. She spun around, but the room was empty. Her heart raced as she turned back to the mirror. The figure was still there, its eyes boring into hers. She reached out to touch the mirror, and her hand passed through the glass. She gasped, pulling her hand back and stumbling away from the mirror. Sarah's curiosity was now mixed with fear, but she was determined to uncover the truth about the mansion. She decided to check the basement, where the sounds of dripping water seemed to be coming from. She found the door to the basement at the end of the hallway and descended the creaky wooden steps. The air grew colder and damper as she went down, and the sound of water grew louder. At the bottom of the stairs, she found herself in a dark, damp basement. The walls were lined with old, rusted pipes, and puddles of water covered the floor. She walked carefully, her flashlight illuminating the way. In the far corner of the basement, she saw a small door. She approached it and opened it, revealing a hidden room. Inside was a makeshift altar, with candles and strange symbols drawn on the walls. Sarah's heart pounded in her chest as she realized she had stumbled upon something sinister. She heard a noise behind her and turned to see a figure standing in the doorway. It was the same man she had seen in the library, his eyes hollow and expressionless. "You shouldn't be here," he said, his voice echoing in the small room. Sarah backed away, her heart racing. "Who are you?" as she asked, her voice trembling. The man stepped closer, his eyes filled with a strange, sad light. "I am Henry Blackwood," he said. "I was the owner of this mansion. And I am its prisoner." Sarah felt a chill run down her spine. "What happened here?" she asked, her voice barely a whisper. Henry looked at her with a haunted expression. "The spirits of the mansion are restless. They were wronged in life, and now they seek revenge. They trapped my family and me here, and we have been cursed to wander these halls for eternity." Sarah listened to Henry's story, her heart heavy with sadness and fear. She realized that the spirits were not just haunting the mansion, they were seeking justice for the wrongs done to them. "How can I help?" she asked, her voice filled with determination. Henry looked at her with a glimmer of hope. "There is a way to break the curse," he said. "But it is dangerous. You must find the relics of the spirits and return them to their rightful places. Only then will they find peace." Sarah nodded, her resolve firm. "I'll do it," as she said. "I'll help you and the spirits find peace." Henry smiled, a ghost of his former self. Thank you," he said. But be careful. The spirits are powerful, and they will not give up their relics easily." Sarah began her search for the relics, determined to help the spirits find peace. She explored every corner of the mansion, searching for clues and hidden rooms. The first relic she found was a locket, hidden in a dusty old chest in the attic. It belonged to Elizabeth Blackwood, and as she held it, she felt a strange warmth. As she placed the locket on the altar in the basement, she felt a shift in the air. The whispers grew quieter, and the house seemed to breathe a sigh of relief. Encouraged by this, Sarah continued her search. She found a diary in the library, a wedding ring in the master bedroom, and a child's toy in the nursery. Each relic seemed to hold a piece of the mansion's history, and as she returned them to the altar, the spirits grew calmer. The last relic was the most difficult to find. It was a pocket watch that belonged to Henry Blackwood. Sarah searched the entire mansion, but it was nowhere to be found. She felt a growing sense of urgency as the whispers grew louder, more insistent. Finally, she remembered the mirror in the hidden room. She returned to the room and looked into the mirror, hoping for a clue. To her surprise, the reflection showed her standing in a different room, one she had not seen before. She followed the reflection's clues and found a hidden door behind a bookshelf in the library. Inside was a small, secret room. On a pedestal in the center of the room was the pocket watch, glowing with an eerie light. As she reached out to take the watch, she felt a cold hand on her shoulder. She turned to see Henry standing behind her, his eyes filled with sadness. Thank you," he said, his voice barely a whisper. "You have given us hope." Sarah nodded, her heart filled with determination. She took the pocket watch and returned to the basement, placing it on the altar with the other relics. As the final relic was placed on the altar, the air in the basement grew thick with energy. The whispers grew louder, filling the room with their eerie cadence. Sarah felt a cold breeze brush against her skin, and the candles on the altar flickered and went out. Suddenly, the room was filled with ghostly figures, their faces twisted with anger and pain. They surrounded Sarah, their eyes filled with a desperate hunger for justice. "Please," she said, her voice trembling. "I just want to help." The spirits seemed to hesitate, their eyes flickering with uncertainty. Then, a figure stepped forward. It was Elizabeth Blackwood, her face pale and ethereal. "You have brought us our relics," she said, her voice filled with a strange, sad beauty. But there is one more thing you must do." Sarah nodded, her heart pounding in her chest. What is it?" she asked. Elizabeth looked at her with eyes filled with centuries of sorrow. "You must perform the ritual to release our souls. Only then can we find peace." Sarah listened as Elizabeth explained the ritual. It was an ancient ceremony, passed down through generations. It required Sarah to chant a series of incantations while holding each relic, and then to light the candles on the altar. Sarah's hands trembled as she picked up the first relic, the locket. She began to chant the incantation, her voice shaking but growing stronger with each word. As she finished the chant, she felt a wave of energy wash over her, and the locket seemed to glow with a warm light. One by one, she performed the ritual for each relic. The diary, the wedding ring, the toy, and finally the pocket watch. Each time, she felt the energy in the room grow stronger, and the whispers grew quieter. As she placed the final relic on the altar and lit the candles, the room was filled with a brilliant light. The spirits seemed to dissolve into the light, their faces filled with relief and gratitude. The light grew brighter, enveloping Sarah in its warmth. She felt a strange sense of peace wash over her, and she knew that the spirits had found their release. The whispers were gone, replaced by a profound silence. She turned to see Henry standing beside her, his face filled with a peace she had never seen before. Thank you," he said, his voice soft and filled with gratitude. "You have given us what we have longed for all these years." Sarah smiled, her heart filled with joy. "You're welcome," she said. "I'm glad I could help." Henry nodded, his form growing fainter. "The curse is broken," he said. "We can finally rest." With those words, he vanished into the light, leaving Sarah alone in the basement. The candles flickered and went out, and the room was plunged into darkness.